Hello everyone, my name is MrNJersey and welcome to my channel. In this video we are back with another Q&A session with the developers. This time around we're going to be asking and answering some of the most recent questions that you guys have submitted to the devs. So with that said, let's jump straight into it. I've got the devs just here with us. We're going to be driving around a little bit, checking out the Soy Islands, exploring a little bit of the world, and going through these questions. Hey devs, what's going on?
Hello, how you doing? Thank you for having me on your channel.
Only a pleasure. So we got some more questions from the community. Obviously, everyone really liked the Q&A session we did a few weeks ago. Went down really well, and I think the community really enjoyed having some of their questions answered. So we have some more. I think the first thing we need to do is figure out how to drive these cars. Now, these are, I think, Bales' new car, so we're going to be interesting to see how these work. Let's see if we can get these on running. Pretty straightforward, actually. Let's go and close the doors and let's see if we can drive. Okay, so let's get straight into some of these questions. So the first one we got coming through from Gemini is going to be, what is the estimated release date for modular engines here in Stormworks?
So soon. I think we're trying to get the final stuff ironed out. Yeah, I think everyone's kind of aware that we've been changing a lot of stuff on experimental regarding the modular engines at the moment. So we're hoping to have an announcement soon, and we're hoping to get it out soon. We're quite excited to share it, but I can't say if it's going to be, this month or next month, but hopefully this month or next month we'll be able to release modular engines.
Fantastic. So probably within the first quarter of this year we're looking at.
Yeah, I say this month. This is 25th of January today, so not this month. Hopefully February, maybe March.
Cool. Fantastic. You're slowing down a little bit there. Great. So the next one is coming in from Dreadway, and we have is, do you have any plans to add in more helicopter rotors or propellers? And different sizes, different variations of them. I think at the moment we only have, like two different sizes for helicopters, three different sizes for planes. So any plan on adding some different ones, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there is. We're working on some stuff at the moment. I think, we've been watching the vehicle showcase channel, watching the workshop, and there's a lot of helicopters that have turned up recently that are like coaxial helicopters as well. So yeah, we're looking at adding helicopter blades with a torque connector on the top so that you can stack them up.
Okay.
So that you'll be able to do, because it's the coaxial helicopters look fantastic, and then they've got the pipe that kind of has to go around the bottom rotor to reach the top pod, and of course they've got these big base pieces, and then the rest of the helicopter just looks amazing. So want to deal with that. So we're going to hopefully be adding some new helicopter rotors soon. They'll support coaxial, and they will also maybe have some drag to them, so that as they rotate, they will cause you to yaw, so you will need the tail rotor. The tail rotor will have a more of a function just for flying in a straight line as well. It won't affect existing helicopters. The old rotor blades will stay the same, but these new coaxial or advanced rotor blades, I guess, will have the coaxial support. They'll have the yaw support. I think people have asked for variable, being able to kind of like program the length of their blades the same way that you might with a wheel kind of thing. Yeah, that one would be a good thing to do. We'll have to see. We haven't done that part of it yet, so but we'll see, because we are aware that that's a popular suggestion as well. It's a little bit awkward with the way Stormworks works. We kind of want to have the blocks, and the rotor blade kind of reserves the blocks around it so that when you place it can spin. So that's a little bit awkward with that, because that has to be a set size, and we can't just be changing the size of the component as you change a property of it. So we'll have a look at that one. Maybe it'll just be like the wheels, where you can just reduce or increase the size of the rotor blade by a little bit or something like that. But
okay.
Or we could stop reserving the voxels, and maybe the rotors just break if you spawn them and the vehicle is kind of colliding or whatever. The rotors could just break off if you built it wrong. I don't know, but we'll look at that as well, because we're aware that players do want the variable size rotor blades.
And do you think, carrying on with that question, do you think you'll get rid of the blocks underneath the base? So for example, like with a small rotor at the moment, it has that 3x3 base on it?
Yeah, so that's the plan. So it's a very much kind of a stripped down, compressed version of that.
Very nice. I think a lot of players will be interested about that. Next question coming in from Spider. saying, are you ever going to be implementing any pulleys? So obviously with rope that we have now in game, it would be quite cool to have some type of like pulley system, so you could, maybe attach cargo on one side, get it strapped up to a pulley, and then go back down to your creation. You could use a little winch to obviously put it up and down.
I may have had an accident with my vehicle. Yeah, can I get a lift, please? Hang on. Oh, it almost righted itself, but not quite.
Let's see.
Yeah, I don't. Can I even get out of this thing?
You can open the door. That should flip you.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm back up. Okay.
Cool.
Right. So yeah, Spider has asked about pulleys. So with the pulley situation, I don't know, I guess, is the answer. Like it's a complicated physics problem, because obviously there's a rope and there's got forces on each end, and obviously it's got to run through, and so that would have to kind of integrate with the physics engine. The physics engine doesn't support that natively, so we'd kind of have to add that ourselves, and I think it's quite a niche request. It's for the crane crew, right? I think it's the crane players want these pulleys, and you can understand why, but it is just for cranes, so it's not a core part of the game. So I don't know, it's possible, it could happen. We don't plan it at the moment.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Is going to be, will we ever be able to paint the insides of hinges, or maybe the faces of pivots individually? So I know that obviously very well myself with doing building. Where's my car gone? Down there.
It's just rolled back.
So for example, I know this is the case when you have, for example, like a fluid port. So a fluid port, when you put on the creation, you paint the face of it. It also paints the back of it. And I know obviously that same thing goes with like doors and like your window, your port windows. For like if you paint one side of it, it paints the other side of it too. Is there, and I think what he's asking here is there any plan to maybe change that so that you can paint both sides maybe a different color of a door or a window or different other pieces like that?
Yeah, so obviously it is possible. We did discuss it quite a while ago now. I think we probably discussed it maybe a year ago, how we might start to implement that kind of thing. It's not a massive job. It just requires us essentially like figuring out how we're going to identify extra areas on the mesh to be swapped out, where this area is going to have its color swapped out. And obviously not all of the parts of the mesh are paintable, but then you kind of want some parts of the mesh to be independently paintable. So yeah, we discussed that we could have some additional swap out data just to allow that to go in, and we could add that in. That is possible. Yeah, we should keep voting for it on the issues board.
Great. And that came in from that frog Curtis. Cool. Let's go on to the next one. So this one is from Thales, asking that, will you ever consider rebalancing mass, especially with water weight being quite low at the moment, according to him?
So I think Thales has had this answered several times, including a lengthy reply on the issue tracker. So I'm not sure why he's asking again. But the answer is in short, no, and in lengthy reply is answered in detail on the issue tracker. And the reason is essentially just because the system works as it is, because it's about physics stability and how maths works on the computer and how physics works in real-time games. And there's limitations, and we have changed how I can't talk and drive at the same time here.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time too.
We've balanced the numbers so that the weight between physics objects is less dramatically different, and this has a huge improvement to how the physics behaves, and it's a lot less glitchy and a lot less buggy by having masses that are of similar magnitude. And they can still have, you can have something that is very heavy and something that's very light, but you can't have something that is perhaps only a few grams, and then something that is many, many, many tons. When you have things like that colliding with each other, the computer maths just doesn't have the level of precision in order to be able to resolve those accurately. And the way that physics engines work is it's this kind of iterative type maths, which requires additional sub-steps in order to be able to increase the accuracy. And of course, you don't really want to be adding those sub-steps in because they're incredibly expensive to add. And that's why, to get this to work in a real-time game, you do have to change how the masses work. And so we have done this balance where, on the face of it, it kind of seems right, but it's not based on real physical values.
Cool. Fantastic. Great. Let's move on to the next one. So this is a question coming from Velocitic and asking about the obviously weapons DLC / update, and pretty much just asking for a little bit more detail, saying that what type of weapons are going to be added. Is it going to be like small mounted machine guns? Is it going to be cannons? I think you did speak about it ever so briefly in one of the updates. I think you mentioned about it that you were probably going to doing modular weapons. I think you went into a little more detail, but would you like to go into a little more detail about it now?
Yeah, sure. So the current state of it is we've got a range from 25 mil machine guns that are maybe 8 blocks long, I'm going to guess. Maybe less than that, to very, very large kind of howitzer style cannons that you'd want mounted on a ship,
cool.
Like naval cannons and stuff. So we got the full range there, and the mechanics there are unique. Let's see if I can write this again. Yes.
Oh,
the doors are brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh no, you've done it too. Yeah, it's there's quite a broad range, and it's really interesting because they're very different. And obviously, the rate of fire is very, very different on the different types of weapons, from having automatic ones to having single shell firing cannons and so on. So you'll be able to build small vehicles of this kind of scale with machine guns on. You'd be able to build larger wheeled vehicles like tanks, for example, with larger cannons, maybe even something in between, with kind of what you might expect with like a BTR 30 mil style cannon on, like a light tank, a heavy tank. You'll be able to start going into naval cannons, artillery tanks, and then huge naval cannons with range of several kilometers. And then we're looking at building it all up in modules as well, so that you'll have a lot of control over how your ammunition handling works and the properties of your cannon as well.
Okay, very nice. And are you thinking, so obviously when you're talking about that, you spoke a lot about like weapons, like barreled weapons. Are you considering any other types of weapons, like missiles, torpedoes, bombs, anything like that?
Yeah, so currently we're thinking about keeping it up to the play. A lot of players have been designing their own kind of missiles, like kinetic missiles at the moment.
Yep.
And I think that all they're missing is the explosive charge. So we're looking at adding explosive blocks to that they can add to their missiles, and add these explosive charge to their existing missile designs. Standalone missiles you just kind of clip on, I think would be nice to do. We're not planning on doing that yet, in terms of having maybe smaller compact missiles with maybe a kind of more of a kind of pre-programmed function could be actually quite good, but we haven't done that yet, so I can't promise that would happen.
Okay.
But yeah, you will be getting you'll be able to make torpedoes, you'll be able to make cruise missiles and maybe bombs and so on with the parts that we've got planned at the moment.
Cool, fantastic. Let's move on to another question here. This one is a question asking, why isn't there any pivots that can do 360-degree angles? Now, I can obviously shed some light on that, and I think you can obviously carry on answering it. So I think what he's saying here is, obviously you have the two different types of pivots. So obviously we have the 1x1s and the 3x3s. but I know that the velocity pivot can do 360, but I think he's talking about just the regular pivots that it can only do like 180 degree field of view or motion. He says, why aren't you theoretically doing a 360 degree one?
Well, the answer is because you can already make it yourself using a simple microcontroller and the
Velocity one.
The velocity one, exactly. Yeah. And this is just how robotics works in real life as well. We're just kind of mirroring that a little bit in terms of, you'd have the servo style one where you just input the target position and it tries to get to that target position like a servo works in real life. And then, of course, you've got the motors with rotary encoders in there just giving that position feedback as the robotic part works in. So yeah, I mean, we could do that, but it's very kind of we've added the servo type in. It does have a range of 360, but it can't do more than 360. So you do have this can't go beyond point. And I mean, I think that covers the vast majority of robotic players' needs. And then obviously, if your needs are beyond that, you do have the other part as well. But it's also, it's part of Stormworks of figuring out how you do the stuff that you want to do on the parts, and it's it's part of the design gameplay, I think, as well. So I think as it works right now, it works quite well.
Fantastic. Another question came in from quite a few players, was just going a little more detail about the fluid spawner. Obviously, we got the fluid spawner a few days ago in, I think, last week's update, and people are just pretty much saying, well, okay, we know what it does more or less, but can you go into a little more detail on how it works behind the scenes, maybe?
So it is very, very simple. It's not affecting any of your buoyancy. It's not affecting your fluid volumes and your fluid tanks and so on. It's literally just at the point at which we generate the physics shape for the vehicle, we just fill that shape in with basic blocks. We just flood it in with basic blocks. If it's an enclosed volume, it just gets flooded in. But that is only concerning the physics shape generation. It doesn't affect the center of mass. It doesn't affect how the buoyancy works. It doesn't affect your fluid systems. We're just filling that shape in with basic blocks, and it's just using then the same algorithm that we've been using for a very long time. And I mean, the only thing really to note is obviously you shouldn't use that if, for example, you've got some advanced multi-body system inside that body where you might have like a stabilization weight moving left and right and stuff, because obviously the physics is going to collide there and you can have a problem. But yeah, it's just filling it with basic blocks. So of course, flood filling it in makes it super simple for our physics algorithm. And we go into this in detail. There's a Steam guide on this. We talk about it in the announcement as well of how the algorithm works. And it's a huge help to have those spaces filled in, because it makes it really easy to start to generate these much simpler shapes. And I mean, that's very well demonstrated in the GIF in the announcement and in the Steam article as well.
Cool. And yeah, just basic going over that again, just with the types of things that you're allowed. So as you said, like you can't have a multi-body part inside the like stabilization system. Do you want to go into just like the very basics? Like as far as I'm aware, it's like literally square blocks and that's all you're allowed in that space. But I know a lot of players being like, well, I've got a wedge in there and it doesn't work, or should it work? Or do you want to go into a little more detail about that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you have a wedge, then the physics flooder isn't going to flood that wedge. It's only going to flood the whole cube. So if you strip the wedges out, you strip the pyramids and the inverse pyramids out from the insides of these shapes, and that's where you're using the physics flooding, then it just means it creates a really clean thing. Because the physics floodder will only... I've just rear-ended you. We'll have to exchange insurance details. So the physics floodder only just floods the square blocks. So where it hits a wedge, it's not going to then add another half a wedge to kind of fill that up. So you just delete those wedges and then it'll completely fill that volume, rather than leaving lots of little leftover shapes in. And because the physics is losslessly compressed, it means that the physics system will work very hard to preserve these unwanted little hollow areas inside your vehicle, which is obviously then very expensive in terms of it means you end up with a lot more physics shapes building up the shape of your vehicle, and it's a lot more complicated.
Cool. Great. Let's go into the next one. So another question that came through was, do you plan on adding any new or major islands? Maybe in the south with desert mountains slash climate slash terrain, or maybe some different types of things?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when we certainly wanted to do that. I think at the moment, our feeling is, is there a point? Is that really going to make the game better for players if we start spending our time doing that? And I think the the thing we're concerned about is putting the time and energy into doing that, and then of course, the Sawyer Isles is already 200 square kilometer landmass. It's absolutely massive. Our players exploring that to the level where they're like, okay, now I need a new place to explore. I need a new place to go. We're not sure that that's the case right now, so we are apprehensive to start to drop that in. There's a lot of real estate in the Arctic. There's several very large islands. I know the volcano island is 9 square kilometers, I think, or at least it's 9 tiles large. It's
Yeah,
very significant. So I've
and
lost it.
people hardly ever explore it.
Yes. So and that's it. I think if players were kind of getting to the point where they're like, "Oh, I've explored everything," then we're like, "Yeah, we need to add more in." I think players, the part of Stormworks, you shouldn't really be able to reach the edge of the world in a practical sense, in a kind of a normal gameplay sense. So I think we wouldn't want that to happen, but at the moment I don't think that is happening. I think we don't necessarily need those extra biomes. And then if we did, this question then leads on to another player's request, which would be, well, can we design our own islands? Can we have randomly generated procedural islands? And then of course, at that point, what is the what is the feature? Where do we I think I've taken a wrong turn. You've gone the other way.
I've gone to mining.
Yeah, I'm on my way. So yeah, exactly where we start and stop with that feature is very important. So it certainly could happen. We could any of those things I've just mentioned could happen. We're not planning on doing it at the moment, and we'd really need to kind of gauge what players want us to do, and if that is a really important thing for players, then of course I think that is something we'd like to do, but at the moment, I don't think many players want that. I think most players are struggling to explore what is already in the game.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go on to the next one here. So when Weapons DLC / update does come out, will there be missions associated with it? For example, so some says here, like escorting a ship with VIPs, etc., that kind of thing, protecting it from pirates. What are your thoughts to maybe add missions that go along with that update? And maybe the same goes with, I'm adding some more stuff on here, so maybe like when we get the Nucular update or Steam update, will there be missions relating to that type of update?
So I would personally like to do that very much. It's kind of in the general plan. I mean, we don't at the start of a feature, we don't set the exact specification of that feature at the start, because it's a lot easier when you do the framework and the groundwork, and then you look at the what you've got there. It's a lot easier to see, well, what does this need next. So we've done a lot of work on the actual weapon components. Would we like to actually there to be more to do in the world where you're using weapons? Yes, of course. And I think this is some of it you're already maybe seeing hints of with the new AI vehicle control stuff that we're adding, with the AI helicopters and the AI boats. That is kind of hinting towards, well, what if there were maybe military helicopters and military boats? And then of course, if you're looking at how we're building that stuff, we've got these seats, and these seats have a specific AI type to them. And of course, at the moment, there's a AI boat pilot type and an AI helicopter pilot type seats, and that's just telling the AI if when an AI character is in this seat, how are they behaving, how are they using the seat, what do they think it controls, and it means that they do the helicopter behavior or the ship behavior. Could we add a weapons firing behavior? Could there be a weapons firing seat? Could they be in the gunner seat, for example, and start shooting and things like that? And then of course, are we then going to start to do, if you look at the existing mission stuff, and you think, well, how would that translate to weapons DLC, and how would that translate to maybe kind of like some kind of military basis? And I think at that point you will be at the same point we are, because we haven't started writing any weapons based missions, but we are starting to inch towards that thing, and we are thinking about it. And of course we are writing some features that you're seeing now in the game, like the AI ships and helicopters, that are very much thinking about, well, how could this expand in the future?
Cool. I've just headed towards Holtan, by the way.
Right.
I see you. Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to the next question. So, this is coming from Sebastian Prime, if I'm correct, saying, are you planning on adding more logic blocks in and out of the Microcontroller editor?
Sure. I'm not really sure which ones that are. I think there might be something on the board where it says that there's a couple of logic gates that are in the normal game but never got into the microprocessor.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then I think it is the plan to have the. Am I gonna make it? Yes, easy.
Oh,
hilarious. Yeah, I made it. Yeah, so I think if there are ones that are missing, then yes, we'd want to add those in.
Cool. I think the delay never made it in. Just from my memory, at least.
Okay, so yeah, if that one's missing and any of the specific ones are missing, and it makes sense for them to be in the microcontroller, like I think the delay, that would make sense for it to be there. Then yeah,
you could just for the delay, you could just in theory just use a capacitor. To be honest, that's how I usually do it, at least.
That's the kind of thing where if the functionality is already there and it's just a renaming of another component, then we probably wouldn't do it. It just depends.
Everyone's gonna hate me now because I just went and said that.
Well, I mean, we're not gonna, change the name.
Why did you tell him? Why did you tell him that we had that? Oh well, that's fine. Cool. What else do we have on here? So, saying, what are your plans for the nuclear power mechanics? So obviously we know that somewhere along the roadmap we have modular engines coming, we have nuclear coming, we have steam coming, and then we have, I think, if I'm correct, was the natural disasters. So can you go into a little more detail about the nuclear power, very much like weight, heat, refueling, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we're very, very early. I don't think we've really put much code or any code down on the nuclear power stuff yet, but we have been looking at designing it, and I think the concept is that we have a reactor, and the reactor has reactor rods, and when the rods are obviously in the reactor, then the reaction takes place. Then there's the high pressure coolant system, or the heat exchanging system anyway, where you've got the pipe work to take high pressure fluid from the reactor to the heat exchanger.
Yep.
Now, is it the heat exchanger? I think in our context it might be a steam generator, where essentially would add a new fluid type called steam, and it wouldn't necessarily just be water. It would actually be a kind of a water gets converted to steam using a steam generator or a steam boiler, and then it gets recondensed using the steam condenser, and then obviously the energy would transfer in both of those, where obviously it would use up energy to turn into steam, heat energy, and it would produce energy in order to convert into water. So then you'd take your reactor rods, put them in a reactor that would heat up the fluid. Then you would take that hot fluid, tend it to a boiler that would produce steam. The steam goes to the steam turbines or the steam piston.
Yep.
Then it comes out of those, it goes into the condenser, or you can just eject it into the atmosphere like an exhaust, or you can cycle it back around again, stick it through the steam condenser if you want to be a bit more energy efficient, and then it can get cycled back around to the boiler again. And then of course the steam turbine would be producing torque or power, which you could then use for an electrical generator. You could use it for direct drive, and so on. I've really done it this time. I'm fully upside down.
That's fine, I'm coming. Okay, cool. So yeah, so quite a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, quite a lot of things go behind the background of that. It's not just going to be as simple as adding, let's say, a 3x3 block and saying this is a nuclear engine. It's going to be very more detailed, something in line of like what we have with modular engines. There's going to be a lot of different parts that go with it, a lot of different opportunity to make it, how a player wants to make it.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that's in response to, I mean, the players have been so enthusiastic about the modular engines side of things, and the more modular we seem to make stuff, the more approved of it seems to be. So I think players want to be able to design their stuff. They want to be able to program their own thing and make it work the way they want, and play around with the design, and also be able to build systems of different sizes. And just having it in the modular building pieces, I think works best for that kind of thing. So yeah, that's the plan, is to keep this stuff modular, and that's probably a kind of a general design guideline, I think, for the future in terms of continuing to develop the game.
Cool. And I think that's place we can go on to the last question for the amount of time that we have left. Is going to be, will they ever be a 1x1, a 1x2, a 3x1, or 4x1 paintable wedge or block in game?
Yeah, I mean, there could be. We've not scheduled it yet. But maybe that's something for us to stick on the next poll or something, and see what the demand for that is compared to other popular things, because I think that is quite a popular request. So
cool. So that's pretty much all the time that we have for today. I think it's been a great one. Obviously, I think a lot of players really enjoyed the last Q&A we did and found it very insightful. So I'm sure everyone will do the same with this. So yeah, but been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for joining us today, devs. I really appreciate that. And I guess until the next one, we will see you very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.